Boker Tov, Yom Tov, Zarim Tovim, Elila Tov, no matter where you were at. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening. This is Carrie, and we are going to go into some more of Paul's writings. This is the second installment in the teaching segment that I have called Women, Be Quiet. And as Paul's writings go, as being extremely controversial, I'm really wanting to show the depth and the beauty in which Paul writes to those who have the ability to see the codes through the oral tradition. There were many things that Paul was writing, and he was writing to a mature audience, those who had gone past Mother's teaching just from the simple surface excavation of the languages, and wanted to go into the much deeper hidden parts and aspects of ourself, because he truly understood the power with uniting both the divine masculine and the feminine within, and this portion that we are going into truly is showing us that. So I am, for one, very, very grateful for Paul's writings, and although they have been used to beat people up, separate and divide in the English translations, it really is my hope that they will be seen as something that edifies and lifts us up into the oneness unity, that which Yeshua came to show us the way of one. And Paul totally connected to this, and as being one who was highly esteemed because of his knowledge in the sacred writings, once he had the ability to see the code within, he began to transform not only himself, but transform others that would see the code around him. And this is why the early church flourished so much, because they were able to get into these letters that were being passed around, because the code was being taught. And they would be able to take and see what Paul was writing, so that prying eyes that were not in the place of maturity would not truly discover what was being shared, because they weren't ready for it yet. And it would look much different, and it has been seen as very different in the surface translations that went from Aramaic to Greek to Latin to then English. So without further ado, let's jump into the second verse. As we already shared the first verse, I'm not able to meet with Regina today, so it's just going to be you and I.
All right, so last time we were looking about the scripture that was talking about men, for men to pray everywhere, in every place, uplifting their hands purely and without wrath and without disputations. And I really hope that you get a chance to watch that video, because I don't want to take the time to go over that. But one of the greatest revelations within that verse was us becoming part of the great house. And that is for the bride who receives the crown and power on the inside from Source Creator Abba. It was a very, very wonderful portion that Paul was writing about, in us being in the place of maturity as a mighty one. And so, having said that as a foundational precept to this, please go and watch that video if you haven't, because all of these writings, they do build upon one another. And the first portion was really about the divine masculine, and it had to do with anger and our thinking. It is really worthy of watching. I learned a great deal from it. Much of this stuff you will already have intuitively known, but to see that it is actually shared within the sacred writings is an entirely a different thing, because you can see how far off the English translations, without the oral tradition and how to break them down, has left much of it out. In fact, only 5% really makes it in the cut, and then the 5% that is presented, I put a big question mark about. So any scriptures that have really troubled you, don't let them trouble you anymore. As we begin to dive deeper into these things, and you learn how to read these letters and do it for yourself, you will be able to transmute them into something absolutely glorious and wonderful, because they really are the revealing of who you are as we are. So pretty amazing stuff. So the verse we're looking at today is 1 Timothy 2:9. So it also let women with decorous simplicity of apparel, with modesty and with chastity, adorn themselves, not with braidings and with gold, and with fine pearls, and with fine vestments. So this has been used to beat women up for looking nice on the outside. But what is really Paul saying to us here? In the very first word of this writing, we have He Kaf Nun Aleph. And when we look at the root of it, it is He Kaf Nun with a fallen nun. But then it morphed. It had an aleph added. You are going to see that this aleph is added repeatedly over and over and over in this verse. And really, this is a compounded word. This is a compound word of He Vav as he, she, they, and it. So you already know that this is, because it is he, she, they, and it, and is, this really is the unification of the masculine and the feminine into one being as is. And then with the joining of the Kaf Nun, we have the word meaning afterwards, then, next, and so. And it was translated as thus. So what happened when we morphed them together? Well, we lost the vav. The vav was dropped, and the aleph was added. So we have the hey here, should have been a vav. The vav wasn't there. And then we have the added aleph. So when this was written, what else was this showing us? I mean, we see that it's he, she, they, and it, and is, as bringing them into one. But what else is hidden in here? Well, the hey, noon, aleph. So hey, skipping over the kaf, noon and aleph, and there's a reason why I'm doing this. Hey, noon, aleph means profit, be beneficial, and gain. Okay, well that's really positive. So why did I skip the kaf? Well, the kaf is a Hebrew letter, an Aramaic letter. It means to grasp. Grasp a hold of power by taming and yoking ourselves. And because it is on the inside of the word, this is literally talking about us in our inward man. As all of these languages, the Hebrew and the Aramaic, are specifically teaching us as the inward man in the inner place of our most being, which is our heart. This is the place of heart instruction. So this is grasping a hold of the power within, that is within the centermost being of ourselves, of our heart. And if we grasp a hold of it, it is going to be profitable and beneficial, and we will have much gain. That's pretty cool in seeing that. So when you look at the other part of it that I'm reflecting upon, Kaf Nun in the middle of the Hey Aleph, Kaf Nun means thus, so, and yes. So really, there is a yes measurement in here of us. When this revelation comes, hey, then there is a yes within, as it is meant to bring oneness unity. And when I highlight the Kaf Nun, the letters on the Hey and the Aleph is the spirit breath. It's the exhaled in revelation that is then received in teaching and instruction in the way of one. And on the inside, where our spirit being is, it says yes. That is amazing. Thus, so, and yes. It also is from the word kun, which means established and confirmed. But that, because there's not a vav yet, remember the vav was removed, doesn't mean that it's established and confirmed as of yet. It just means that there's an answer or a yes within our spirit. So then when we look at the Kaf Nun Aleph, one of the things that we need to recognize is that the Hey and the Aleph are interchangeable. They always are. So you can't really have an Aleph without a Hey. The revelation, the exhalation of the revelation being brought forth needs to be inhaled in order for you to do something with it. And the Kaf Nun Hey means to give a name or to give a title. Well, that is pretty interesting because we've talked about the name Shem as those who have gone through the consuming fire and the waters of purification that are set above in the word Hashamayim, the heavens, which is the elevation of the Christ consciousness. So there's something about being established as one who is given a title as a name that we're seeing here. But take a look what else is in here. Kaf Nun Aleph means a plant, shoot, a base of a plant. So this really is connecting to the letter Nun itself, because this has to do with a sprout, with a seed of life that gives us a strong base to stand upon. And it's been elevated. It's no longer in its fallen position. So this is from the elevated place of a spiritual path that we take that is going to be, if we grasp a hold of the mouth that is speaking forth this revelation, hey, which is at the beginning, grasping the power, taming ourselves to it, clenching it with both of our fists by taking the spiritual path so that we can enter into the instruction necessary to become as one, the strength of one. So, what I also see here is that this is the revealing of the calling of becoming one. But the most important thing is you need to have the vav to connect. So this is really about us establishing a very powerful vision that Paul is writing to us to say, I'm sharing this revelation with you, but you need to connect to it. And since we have the Nun Aleph, this is a word that means I or we beseech thee, or I or we pray. So this is really the activation of something, of Paul saying, I beseech thee, or we beseech thee, that we would have this revelation so that we could be established, confirmed, if we say yes in our spirit, to be able to give us a strong base to stand upon in becoming one, being called into the oneness consciousness, unity consciousness. The strength of one, or one who is strong, is one who are make up the many who make up the one. And then as we move into this, then we have Af Pe, or Aleph Pe, Af. It's very interesting to see that in Aramaic, the Pe is not in a fallen form. The Nun was. The Nun still is in Aramaic, but the Pe is not. Why is that? Well, because Aramaic is Aramic, Arum, which means a citadel. It means an elevated, an exalted language that is meant to lift you up. So the Pe is the mouth that speaks forth revelation. So it wouldn't be of a fallen revelation. It wouldn't be of something that's dealing with the material world in the matrix. This is something that elevates you up and out of it. One mouth, one language that is meant for a session. Isn't that interesting? So even though we have these words of even, although, indeed, and as well, when we take and trace it back, that it has the meaning of a session, but it also, as also or yea, but it also has the portion of adversatively, though. So in this process, there is an adversarial component that is within this already. Because in oneness, bringing forth this revelation, you are either going to utilize it to help with the accession process, or you are going to act adversely against it. Because this principle of oneness has been seen in the New Age movement, many who are still within the Christian narrative are seeing this as a message that they have great disdain for, even though it is written through and through, and you can see it repeatedly over and over again in the Hebrew and the Aramaic languages. So let's take a look at the etymology of accession, because I really like this. So it's the attainment or acquisition of a position of rank or power, and we've spoken of the first fruits, which is connected to the 144,000. Those who are the first fruits, we have the barley bride and the wheat bride, the first of the first fruits, and then the first fruits. And this is connected typically to a monarch or a president. So if you think of monarch, think of Melchizedek. Melchi is king or queen of righteousness. And when we look at the etymology in the 1580s, that which is added, or the act of acceding, and which it means by assent to an agreement. That actually is a definition of the Aleph Vav Tav, which we shared before. The Aleph Vav Tav, the language, Aleph through the Tav, that are connected to one another, that did agree to come. They assented to coming to be able to help us in our journey from the beginning all the way to the end, from the first and the last, the Aleph through the Tav, so that we could be a sign, signal, and a beacon in our process of becoming. And see, it's a going, approach, a joining, and an increase and enlargement. That's exactly what we needed, because when we enter in, we're in this contracted state, and we need to get into a state of expansion. And then when we look as it morphed a little bit more into the 1640s, the act of coming to a position or into possession, especially in reference to a throne. Again, connect Melchizedek, or as you may know it in English, Melchizedek, or Melchizedek. There we go. I'm so used to saying it in Hebrew that I get tongue-tied when I go back into English. It's from the word anaf, which means a nose or nostril, the face, and occasionally in a person. But also in the system of duality, it can mean ire or strong anger. But because the noon has been removed, in the sense, because there is no noon in this is having to do with the face in how it's being presented, because it's really from pana to face, but this is saying because it is no noon, that means that it doesn't have anything to do with progeny. It has to do with you in your spiritual path, you and you alone, as learning the way of one mouth that speaks. This is pretty amazing to see, because this mouth that is speaking in this unified field of oneness unity is bringing forth this revelation to you as it is connected to a session. I love that. And then, like with this, the next word, if you looked at the letters itself and didn't even see definition of it, in the letters itself, without vowel points, just in the gematria, this is the same word that means to lift up. He lifted. So it makes sense that by assent into an agreement through the process of accession into having the possession of a throne, in becoming Melchizedek, kings and queens of righteousness, in right doing, that we are lifted up. This is so beautiful. Something that I find fascinating in this. So everything is interesting and fascinating to me, by the way, when I look at the language. Aleph Nun Taf Taf Aleph. This is the root. Look how much it changed. I mean, I know you may not be able to see the Aramaic because I'm used to seeing both of these languages through their letters, so I see what's written. So I guess you have to take my word for it. The root is Aleph Nun Taf Taf Aleph. Look at the change that was made. What happened? Well, we dropped off the first Aleph. We kept the Nun. We added the Sheen in the inside, but we dropped both Tavs. Well, that's interesting, because this is the word for woman and wife. And we've been talking repeatedly, many times over, about the bride becoming the wife. So what happened here? Well, if we look at the root word, this is Aleph Nun Tav, which is the word made flesh, and the twin covenants that are on the inside, because Aleph Nun Aleph. So I've highlighted the Tavs. What I didn't highlight is Aleph Nun Aleph, and it's the word in Aramaic that says, and it means I. I who have become one. I am one with Mother, and I am one with Father. I have taken the spiritual path on the inside. I. So then when we morph it, because that's really the position that we take in going from the bride, or the bride to the wife, the process of becoming the wife is becoming the Word made flesh, which is Aleph Nun Tav. So this is then taking I, the twin covenants of the mother and father, and placing them on the inside of you, in the centermost being of who you are, your heart instruction. But we had much change from here. So what we see now is that the oneness unity isn't leading us, because this is the process of our becoming. We have to take the spiritual path and then allow the consuming fire to consume everything that was in us, that is of our lower beast ego nature, all the beastly things that we do to harm one another, acting out in our beast nature. It must be consumed on the altar of our heart. And there is power given to us on the inside if we seek it on the inside. And that is what is going to lead us into the oneness unity, lifting us up. But it takes work. This is not automatic. This is meant to be as is. But it cannot be claimed as that unless you do the work. So this word morphed into this written form, letting us know that this is the process that is necessary for us to become this, the Word made flesh. You do not become the Word made flesh unless you study the word through the sacred letters that actually change, because they are letters of light and love, and they literally compress light within your blood. We've already shared through the writings where it said that our blood was congealed light. So that's what this is doing for us. Now in Hebrew, I find it interesting that in Hebrew, the word is Isha, and it means fire. Fire that is revealed is woman or wife. How amazing is that? So when we look at the reason for Isha, and Ish would be the component of the man, Aleph Yod Shin, when we have them combined, it would be Aleph Yod Shin Hey. The Yod is the vision, the seed vision that is within the man, so you can even think of the man carrying seed, and the woman carries the revelation of the Father on the Father's side. So between the two of them, so again, we can take a look at this in the natural, but think about you in a spiritual connotation of what Paul is writing to us about our spiritual maturation as male and female in coming into one. That's why we started with the man first, now we're going into the woman. So as the masculine carrying the seed vision on the inside that is meant to be planted within the female, the Isha, to bring forth revelation of the Father's covenant, as she's the one that is carrying it. But the two are necessary to come together. The power comes from the divine masculine in the linear function, because that's how we learn the Aleph through the Tav, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, all of the letters to get to the end in the completion of the covenant, where we are marked with a different frequency. But that only can change when we get into the hidden, into the esoteric hidden side that is meant for maturation, because we are ready to become wife. We are ready to enter in the journey to become the Word made flesh. How beautiful. So when we look at the word nasa, which would be the frequency of these letters right here, it means to carry, to lift, to raise. And in the Hebrew wedding, nuptials is nesuin. But how interesting that in the Hebrew wedding, nesuin, it still has a fallen noon, because that is in the material world. Yes, our marriages are meant to lift us up, but it still keeps us in the flesh. It keeps us in the material realm. It keeps us in the matrix, in the system of duality. Because we have a spouse external. It is meant for us to go inward to this form, not having fallen noon on it, not pertaining to the flesh on the fallen side into the matrix, but learning to be lifted up on the inside. This is really going to assist our marriages and create strong family bonds when we can find the oneness unity on the inside, then meet a partner that has done the same thing and operating in that before you bring children into the world. Imagine that. But I find it interesting in duality that with the Nasa, even though it means to lift, carry, raised, he bore and carried, and it contained, look what also can be. He swept away, destroyed. So in duality, both sides are present. But then there's an issue of he forgave and pardoned. And then there's he suffered and endured, but then was lifted up and raised and was exalted and was respected as carried from place to place, from glory to glory, and given in marriage. So we can see that there's a tumultuous doing in the process of our lifting. But look at my note here that I wanted to share with you. If you let the consuming fire do its work, which means you have to take the spiritual path, because that's what's going to let you know that the consuming fire is on the inside. If you let the consuming fire do its work, then it will lift you. By bringing the two covenants within at the heart level, your nature will be changed into the Word made flesh, and this is how you go from bride to wife. So there is purpose for that consuming fire if we go inwardly to see the purpose. Because if we don't, anything that we are doing that are not becoming, it will consume us. Because it's meant to be a catalyst. It's meant to produce change into the oneness unity and lift us up. That is why whenever we get quote-unquote burned, whenever we have catalysts that hurt us on the inside, hurt our heart, it is meant for us to look inwardly to be able to extract what that is necessary to lift us up. And it's usually because we are looking at something externally, an external love that is full of conditions, versus the internal love, which is unconditional, which is never meant to bring harm and never will. Only conditioned love does, because it's not sustainable. Once we get through this duality, we will be all of love, and then we don't have to worry about that. So then we move into the next word. So connecting again, we went from woman and wife and lifting up principle into the word manner, way, form, fashion, dress style, appearance, decoration, behavior, fashion, and figure. So very, very, very interesting that this was written with a Greek word. Actually, the Greek word starts here, schema. And schema, so again, transliteration into Hebrew or Aramaic, both. Letters translate the same, as Samek in Hebrew is the same as Samek in Aleph, or in Hebrew. They're the same, they just look different. One embodies the divine masculine, the other embodies the divine feminine. So I've just put it in the Hebrew for ease because most of us are familiar with these letters versus the Aramaic fashion and form. So this was written by Paul in Greek. Very interesting to see. But I can see why he did it. Because when you take a look at it, so from schema, a figure, a mode or circumstance, by implication, the external condition. Now the reason why he had to write it in Greek is because everything about Hebrew and Aramaic is about the inside condition. So if he was trying to translate or get a point across, he had to use a different word from a different language that meant an external condition, because everything in the Eastern mindset starts with the heart, the inward man. It doesn't start with the head. It always starts with the heart. It's on the inside. So he's trying to bring a point, and he has to use another word for it for a different language, because the Hebrews already were raised with knowing that everything begins and ends with the heart. It's usually the head gets in the way, hence why the Greco-Roman mindset makes it so difficult for us to look at these languages to see what's going on, because we're taught to process it in our head first, before our heart. And it should be the other way around. So when we look at this, schema with external conditions, but look what was added. This is what's so brilliant about what Paul wrote. He added the bet aleph in the front. He added the bet aleph. So remember, in wife, he didn't write the aleph here, right? The aleph was from the root. If he would have put the aleph here in front of this word, it would have been a nasha, which would have been weak and feeble. Mankind as weak and feeble. But he wasn't writing that. So he had to leave that off to lift us up and then add the aleph on here. But what he did is he put the bet in front, and the bet means on the inside. And it means to build. Through your heart that has been pierced. The dagesh is now in the bet, so this makes the sound a B sound instead of a V sound. This is bet aleph. So on the inside, when you get pierced on the inside, meaning something happens to connect to your heart, it pierces your heart, it was meant to pierce you on the inside to lead you into the oneness principle, right? So these external conditions, things that we face that pierce us on the inside, are meant to drive us on the inside so we can connect to becoming one. Because it is through the division, the fact that we see ourselves as being divided, where the hurts happen. But when you get pierced, when you find the oneness and you truly see that we're not separated, that it's an illusion, this gives us the opportunity to be hedged in and supported as the wedding ring and signet ring, shielded with thorns, protecting us, because we've chose to grasp a hold and fill our cup, being tamed with the language that brings revelation while we are in the waters of chaos that produce oneness unity. That is so fascinating. A brilliant, brilliant way of Paul to communicate something to us, taking a word that speaks about external conditions, about the piercing that happens so that we take us in to the inward man to reveal the oneness unity so that we could be married. Again, first verse was about divine masculine, second about the divine feminine. We're on that right now. And we have the word here ending ma as the 100-fold measure. So 30, 60, 30 divine masculine, 60 divine feminine, bringing them both together into the oneness unity while we're in the waters of chaos is the 100-fold measure. But within is also the 1,000-fold measure. So when it is completed, when we become the queen, when we become the wife, we then translate it into the 1,000-fold measure from the 100-fold measure. It's so amazing to see this. So we do talk about behavior. So everything that is on the external side, the external condition is meant for us to see if the internal is matching with the external. Many of us hide in masks by what we wear on the external side. Our hair, our makeup, our fashion. But Paul's not addressing that here. He's talking about, hence why the bet is added. He's talking about the inside, because bet literally in Paleo Hebrew means inside. The inside of the tent, the inside of you. So is the inside of you matching on the outside? Or are you just a mess on the outside and you try to present yourself as wonderful on the outside to just put a mask on so that you're accepted when the inside is completely full of turmoil? They're meant to be married. Divine and masculine and feminine, so you don't have the waters of chaos on the inside of you anymore. So when we talk about the word becoming, this, I should add this too, that when the bet is added to this word here, a schema, it means honestly, becomingly, and with decency. So honestly, honest, to be honest. Again, is what is going on the inside? Are you being honest with yourself? Because on the inside, if we do this, if we work on ourselves, it should manifest on the outside. And then it doesn't matter what you put on, because your frequency is going to radiate so much love and so much beauty that it doesn't matter how you are seen with what you put on in fashion and style and dress and appearance and decoration, because your behavior will be different. I have seen some very beautiful people that have done some very ugly things. Most of us have. So then we get into the next word about being modest, moderate, and sober. This is a nun kaf pei, but again, the aleph is added. So the root of this, nun kaf pei, means to shrink back, to be modest, moderate, but also to be ashamed. Shame and guilt is something that we've all had to work through. Shame and guilt causes us to shrink back. Shame and guilt has been used to make us modest. The church has done that very well. But when we see what is going on here, look at this. Kaf pei, which is in the center of the word, again, in the center of the word, we have nun aleph on the outside, which maybe you're connecting to something I already shared about that. But kaf pei means, this is how you spell the symbol kaf. Okay, remember, in English, aleph is, or A is just A, B is just B. But in Hebrew and Aramaic, every single symbol is spelled by constituent letters that come together to form that symbol. So their frequency is with it. Well, kaf pei is literally the symbol for kaf, grasping a hold and taming yourself through the mouth that speaks forth revelation. And notice, this pei has a dagesh in it. It's been pierced. It's a mouth that has been pierced. In other words, the speech has been tempered. It's moderate and modest speech. Modest speech is that doesn't pertain to pride, because pride is an element of fear and has nothing to do with love. So when we take a look at this, it is the hollow of the hand. So think about putting your hands out and cupping them to receive. But it also means to grasp. That's a fist and power. And you might find it interesting that it also means rock. Upon this rock, Simon, Peter, Kepha was his name, Kepha. Kepha. We can go into names later. But upon this rock, grasping a hold, taming yourself, yoking yourself to the language that brings revelation so that your speech is changed. And look, Kaf Pe Aleph means he bent and inclined and overturned. Well, what did he overturn? What we were overturning really has to do with the fact we are overturning our flesh so that we can become the Word made flesh, not in its fallen position. And it shows that we must take a spiritual path in order to do this, because it's that which then will bring us into the oneness unity, so we don't have to shrink back. Shame is what causes us to shrink back. So it also means to subdue, force, or compel. Again, in duality. Forcing is the opposite of what we want. This is why in the language of duality, it can be used for service to self or service to others. To serve others is when you are choosing to be bent and incline in yourself into the oneness unity. If you are forcing others and you're subduing others by force, then you are serving self. Both are available right now. But Kaf Pe is in the center of Nun Aleph, and Nun Aleph means we beseech thee, we pray. Those who are on the spiritual path are saying, please, I beseech you, grasp a hold, fill your cup, grasp and tame to that which is bringing you revelation through the mouth which is speaking, those things that your mouth would change, that you would be speaking forth the oneness principle, and that everything that you do would be about bringing forth unity, one love, strong, the strength of one. Then we move into another word for clothing, clothes, dress, apparel. So I find it interesting that we were talking about a schema. Paul was using the Greek word about an external condition, and now we have about putting on garments, which would be external. So again, we're talking about external. Sorry, I got a little far off here. Hit the wrong word, or the wrong button. So now we're talking about to put on a garment, to wear, right? Clothe or dress. So it's labash, lamed bet sheen as the root. But what has been added? Well, we have the dalet has been added, the vav has been added, and the aleph has been added. So what do we see here? With the door being added on front, we know that this door must be opened, this revelation, to come so that we can connect to it. It's like a bucket that is drawn from a water from a deep well on the inside in order to deliver us from that which causes us to be weak and feeble and thin. But we must go through that. So dal, I just explained to you really the root of where dalet comes from, but we can see the formation of dal right here, dalet lamed. It won't allow me to highlight that very well. I apologize. So dal, the dalet lamed, something is dangling. Something needs to be connected to so it's not dangling because of the weaker nature. So again, if we're talking about the divine and masculine and divine feminine, what is dangling? Well, they're not connected. That's why we went from man into woman, wife. So we must go through the door of the inward man to have this revealed, where we are weak and thin and needy and poor, because it has to do with our heart. Leb, lamed, bet. Authority on the inside. Again, this is all an inside job. It is always and forever will be an inside job. What else do we see here? We see in the heart of this, without the lamed, of course it's not allowing me to highlight what I want to. There we go. It keeps wanting to take the lamed in there. Bet yod, or bet vav shin, is, if you reverse the order of it, you get the word shuv, which means to repent, to turn. It's from yeshav, to settle. It also means to be married. But more importantly, it means to repent and to return, to turn. This is where, literally where we get the word repent in English. But what did we do? Well, it's speaking to us to reverse the order. So on the inside, connecting to the fire, what we do to change this from being something that we put on the outside is turn it around. Shin vav bet. Let the consuming fire be something that you connect to on the inside in order to build yourself on the inside. And the instructions, so if we look at the lamed and the aleph, which are on the outside of the bet vav shin, the instructions in the way of one will help you to turn yourself around. Instead of the inside connecting to fire that consumes you, that you would take the same fire and turn it, change it so that it purifies and builds you through love on the inside. I hope you're connecting that. So again, Paul is letting us know we have all of these things that are external, and he keeps saying it's all an inside. Go on the inside. Take the door on the inside. It's about your heart. It's about building yourself, taking the consuming fire and letting it deal with your lower beast ego nature in order to do what? Bring us into oneness unity, because your beast ego nature will always keep you separate, because your lower beast ego nature is the ego that says you're separate. And because you don't know you are one, you don't handle yourself properly and you harm others. Because really, when you are harming others, it's because of the potentiality of self-loathing on the inside, and you project it and you hurt others because you're really punishing yourself. We need to turn that. Not let the punishing of self-loathing of that fire that consumes us, to turn it so we don't project it on one another. That really, if I hurt you, I'm hurting me. And so if I'm loving me, I'm loving you. And if I'm loving you, I'm loving me. That is oneness unity. So then we get into the word shamefastness, modesty, and reverence. And now, I needed to look up shamefastness, and we'll get into it because it's not a word that I use. But I did wanted to point out that there's several movements that happen within this. And it's interesting that the root in Aramaic is het mem zadi. And then it was changed into tav, het mem zadi tav aleph. But then it went through one more change where the bet was added. So fascinating. This is a lengthy word here. So the root in it means shame. Het mem zadi means shame. But this is very, very important to note. So again, in its static position, lump of clay, it means shame. But it never, ever appears this way in the New Testament. Let that sink in. The reason why it doesn't show up this way is that shame is something that happens to cause. Something happens to cause shame within us. It isn't automatic. That's why it's never written in this form. It's from its static position. There is no shame. It has to be activated. It has to be verb-driven. And that means additional letters must be added to it in order to make it kinetic energy, an action, instead of being potential energy. So there is potential for shame, but it isn't automatic. It really is. It's something that becomes. It's not something that is. It's an adopted mindset that we must turn away from. Otherwise, we'll be clothed with it. I find it interesting, too, that when we look at this word Aramaic, in Aramaic, there's other meanings for it. It means to be sour or to be leavened, or was sour and was leavened. He delayed. So again, if we're talking about shame, if it's a very low vibration, if you look at the Hawkins scale, it's literally like a 20 in the levels of consciousness, where Christ anointing goes as high as 1,000. Shame is at 20. And that is when somebody has forced something onto you. And we can see this, that's what religion has done to many of us. It has shamed us by the teachings of original sin. Like, you're born into it and you need to be ashamed. Well, that's bunk. I've already shared that. You can go back. in some of the teachings on our videos that we have in our archive, and it's bunk. It's not right. We were never born into it. We were shamed into believing it because it was forced upon us. So, beware the shaming of the Pharisees, because that's really what it's talking about. So, having leaven of the Pharisees means that you take upon shame. Any spiritual teacher that is pushing this upon you for you to feel guilty and to take shame upon yourself. That's what we're talking about here. The resolve always comes in the letters, though. Always, always, always. And I did want to point out to you that in the root of this, in the inside of it, memzadi means an oppressor. So, life can be an oppressor if you are adopting yourself into levels of shame. The leaven of the Pharisees. But there's good news here. There's a lot of good news here. What do we have added on the front? We have bet tav. We have the 222. Bet is the second letter of the alphabet, of the Aleph Bayit Ivri. And the tav is the 22nd letter. And we've shared this many times. The bet tav is the 222 journey. The two paths of the 22 letters that are meant to be one as 44. 22 plus 22 is 44. The two paths that become one, the 44 letters of Hebrew and Aramaic that make up the 144. This is all about building us in covenant through creation where our frequency changes, and that brings forth love. Now, let's look at something here that's even more wonderful. We have the word matzah with a tav in the middle. When you take a look at matzah, it is the word that means to find, to reach, to come upon. He found, he came upon and met and encountered. He hit, or it befell, and it happened. It was sufficient. Well, what is it? Well, that was once the oppressor. To find and to reach oneness unity is now letting us know that that is what is sufficient for us. That we are to find the oneness unity, which then marks us on the inside, the tav, the covenant of creator, of Abba, of source, of origin. This doesn't have anything to do with mother and father per se. This has to do with connecting, matzah, finding source creator and being marked with that covenant. A completely different signature sine wave frequency change. We have an awakening from mother, an awakening of father, an awakening from source creator on the inside. And that's finding it. And that is life. So, through the 222, through the bet tav, as a daughter who builds through covenant, you find life. You were once outside of it, but then you found life by being empowered, being marked, because you found in the living waters of chaos, you found the journey to hunt and chase after that which would bring you forth the covenant of Father, the covenant that would end up leading you in finding the oneness unity. So the resolve from taking shame is building through the twin covenants, because you can see bet means to build on the inside. We have the tav of mother, and we have the tav of father, and we have oneness unity. And guess what, you guys? That's the necessary requirements to be able to take that into becoming the wife, right here. Those are the two covenants that get placed on the inside of you as the Word made flesh. I hope you're connecting to that. I love it when I see what the letters are saying to us. It's so amazing to see it. So moving on. All right, so we went from shamefastness. Let's look a little bit deeper about what this shamefastness is. So I gave you the resolve, but I wanted to see shamefastness is the state of quality of being modest, shy, or bashful, or the state of shamefaced or full of shame. So there's two ways to see this. But really, being modest and shy is really the same thing as being full of shame. That's the thing about duality, is they look like they're two separate entities, but they're really the same thing. Because it's restrained by shame or firm in modesty. It's the same thing. It is shame that ends up causing someone to be shy. Because if we truly didn't have shame, we would be able to stand as is, brilliant as who we were created to be, no longer hiding, no longer being bashful, no longer being restrained. So fast, firmly fixed, steadfast, constant, and secure. So shame, fast, is firmly fixed in shame. We need to change that. And the resolve came from the letters. Build on the inside the twin covenants of mother and father that will bring forth life in the waters of chaos by hunting and chasing after that which is going to bring you into the oneness unity. And then I wanted to talk about reverence. Because reverence is a deep respect for someone or something. And we have shared before that really when we have reverence of God, it is having reverence for that which is not yet known. Because that which is not yet known, when it's revealed to us, reveals more about who we are as God. And reverence is not what they have the fear of God. That was something the church put in. That was something for the church to control you and manipulate you through fear. Because they shamed you. Reverence is deep respect for the process in becoming. The other word I wanted to look at was modesty. Because in modesty, it really means freedom from exaggeration and self-control. Exaggeration comes from pride. Pride is a mask for fear. Self-control is one of the fruits of the Spirit. Correct conduct, keeping due measure, temperate measure, manner, quality of having a moderate opinion of oneself. So, again, dealing with all of this, pride is the external side of masking fear that comes from shame. If I'm prideful, then you won't touch me. Modest is the other side of the coin. They're both based in fear. And this is because we have been shamed and guilted from a not found principle of original sin that was never there to begin with. Shame was never meant to be. It is something that is forced upon you. And we need to turn our minds from that to release us from that which oppresses us. Then we get into another word of modesty and sobriety. This flipped. Word has a tendency to do that because the aleph is supposed to be on the suffix side, and it's just not wanting to do it. It's just going to keep flipping the words until I get it in the right order. Oh. My goodness, it's not really wanting me to do it. Let me see. I'm going to try one more letter here. There we go. So we have the same word again. We have it again, but now look how much it changed. So when we were looking at it before, just so I can show you, all the way up here, modest, moderate, and sober, right? We went all the way down and look how it morphed in the process of everything that I was showing you. It morphed to having a vav and a bet added, plus the vav tav added in addition to that aleph. How amazing is that? So, when we take a look at this, this is one who is connected to mother, who is chosen to build as a son. So this is important for you to understand and comprehend this, because here we have a representation of bat, which is daughter. We have daughter, which is a completed son, and we have here one who is built. So how did this process happen? So we brought the resolve of what we do so that the daughter is no longer is shameful, because we chose to be humble and teachable by connecting to mother and building as a son. building ourselves on the inside, as it's an inside job, by taking the spiritual path, taming and grasping a hold of the power of the language through a pierced mouth, meaning that which we speak is now connected to Father in meekness, having His mark, His covenant, in becoming one. The Son who is built in order to have a sine wave signature frequency change, entering into oneness unity. So in looking at sober, we can take a look at this, because many people, when you look at the word, there's many ways to look at it. So we can see sober as not drunk, temperate, moderate, and sensible, right? But it also means appropriately solemn, serious, not giddy. Moderate in desires or actions, temperate and restrained. Quiet, calm, not overcome by emotion. I wanted to share that with you because part of what we have been as women, as a flesh being, that we are too emotional. And sometimes that is the case, and I get that. But that's because it's easier for us, because women are really connected most of the time to our hearts, and that's where emotions come from. Men have been told to turn off that portion. So you have, again, this is about divine masculine and feminine. So what we're doing is we're taking the masculine of no emotions, turn it off, and the feminine of too emotional, and bringing them together, which brings forth balance. Because again, when you have the mark of mother and the mark of father, so again, Father is teaching us the divine feminine. Mother teaches us the divine masculine. That's why we start by building as a son in the divine masculine. But we are connecting to, in our power, in our meekness, in our emotions, by balancing it out, by connecting to the divine feminine through Father and bringing them into oneness unity. That is so amazing and beautiful. And again, now we see the word, we have not again. Noon Aleph, and on the inside of that we have the Hey Vav. He, she, it, they. I, we beseech thee. We beseech thee as he and she, it, they, to become as one. And the root of it is Hey Vav Aleph, which means this is the spirit breath, the exhale connected to the inhale that is meant to turn you, to change you, if you take the spiritual path. We're almost done here. I know this has gone long. So when we look at adornment, look at adornment. Zadi bet tav. That is the root. Zadi bet tav. It's meant in the original form to have an aleph on the suffix, but it does not. Doesn't have an aleph. It has a hey, yod nun. The tav was added on the front, and a yod was added in the inside. So what do we have here? Turn from the adornment of the flesh. Meaning, if you are adorning yourself on the flesh, on the outside, you're not doing the work of what you've been meant to do, which is the inside work. So Mother helps you orient yourself on the inside. That's why there's a tav added on there, on the front. Because that allows you to orient yourself so that you are operating the golden rule. You're going to treat others the way you want to be treated. This is no longer as a child, as being evil. We've already shared that the word evil means a child or an infant, one that affects and harms and hurts because they haven't grown up. They haven't been taught, so they just hurt, so they're just a child, right? But Zadi bet Tav. All right, so Zadi bet Tav by itself means to adorn oneself, to set an order and to furnish. Okay, Zadi bet Tav, I can see that. And then Zadi bet Yod Tav Aleph means adornment, decorative work. But there is no Aleph. There's absolutely no Aleph. So again, the oneness principle is not meant to be something that just decorates you and you put it on the outside and you're talking about it. Oh, I believe in the oneness unity. You can talk about it all you want. That's what Greco-Roman mindsets do. I read a book, I can see it, I'm going to say that I know it, but you haven't become it yet. And that is why it is showing us that this is important to do, that it's about your bayit. That's why the word house, temple, bayit, you are the third temple. It's about you as the temple. You got to have mother's mark. You need to learn about the golden rule so that people are safe, and then you need to go on the spiritual journey. The Zadi is risen. If it was fallen, it would mean that you are hunting and chasing in the material realm, that which is material. But because it's written, that means you're on a journey, hunting and chasing on the spiritual path that will allow you to build your temple, giving you power on the inside. As a daughter. So again, son and daughter are interchangeable. Ben and Bot. One that builds, one who is. And we do this, Father, through the Father's revelation, His teaching, which is the hidden, the dark, the esoteric, that is meant for one who has already gone through Mother's teaching, hence why her mark is there, to give you the power to deal with your fallen flesh. Because if you're one that's prone to adorn on the outside, it's meant as an inside job for your temple, because that's where the power resides. We want to furnish ourselves on the inside, not the outside. The revelation is meant to empower your flesh, but the goal is oneness unity. That's why the one Aleph isn't there yet, because you have to do the work to get there. So Mother helps to set us in order, but the revelation of oneness really comes from Father. He is giving the power to accomplish this for those who are spiritually mature and are no longer children, aka those who are already betrothed as the bride, as ones who are truth, to be the bride betrothed. So, if you are trying to adorn yourself on the inside and you're still dealing with that on the flesh and you haven't done the inside work, you really need to be instructed in the way of one. Then we get into the twisting, curling, and braiding. Both of these have a bet, so we know that it's an inside job and we know it has to do with oneness unity. But what do we have on the inside of this? We have Gadal. It means weave, plait, and twist in the Aramaic, but in Hebrew, it means to be great, large, grew up, brought up, made great, raised and reared. He magnified, is growing, becoming great, increasing greatness, magnitude, and majesty. But it is not in a static state of Gimel Dalet Lamed. It has the Vav added in the middle, which means you have been connected to your heart, to your source, to your center of your being. You're connected to Abba. Your heart has been connected. Because it was once dull, weak, and feeble. But what did you do? Well, you went on the inside to build yourself, and you gathered that which you needed to, the living water teachings that would instruct you so that you could be raised up, matured, no longer, and weaned, not off the milk, or you're off the milk, because you went through the door of the inward man to connect to your heart, where then you were instructed in the way of one. And this is what is rearing you up, making you great, bringing forth majesty, magnifying you as one who has been raised and reared in the way of oneness unity. But it is an inside job. That is so amazing. But look at this too. In duality, we always have both existing because we're meant to bring them into oneness unity. So we're not dueling in the system of duality. So this is another word to mean to dress, garment and dress, mantle and cloak, to cover. But it also means to betray and deceive and to act treacherously. So what kind of garment are you trying to put on? Because if you are acting in this version, the garment that you are putting on to betray and deceive others means you are going to be pierced. You need to connect to your heart and you need to be instructed in the way of one because you haven't grown up. You are still an infant. You are still a child who is evil, that is harming and inflicting harm on another. And you're trying to conceal it and cover it up. But we are all one. And somebody has to hold the negative pole in the system of duality so that we can learn from it and see that that's not a path that we want anymore. We want oneness. We want unconditional love. We want to all become one so we don't have the division that causes the hurts and the harm. Then we have gold and pearl. But I did want to share with you that the connecting rod in this is the Aleph Vav. Aleph Vav. Oneness. Connect to it. Because we're going to go into the gold and we're going to go into the pearl. The gold and the pearl are connected to each other in oneness unity. Ken has shared about the pearl of great price before. He's talked about the pearly war horses. There's many, many, many things that he has talked about the pearl in the past. I don't know what teachings they are because it's been, over a year of sharing in the morning, excavations at dawn. But he has shared about that. So in gold, what are we looking at? This is so fascinating. I always say that. I know. It's fascinating. It's interesting. I get it. Please, Carrie, find another word. How many of you listen and try to see how many times I say fascinating and interesting? I'm sure there are some. This word is Dalet Hebet. Dalet Hebet is the root. So what do we have? We have the Bet Aleph again. So this is already letting us know. Connect to Mother in humility. This is an inside job. Build yourself on the inside because this is meant for oneness unity. Now, refined gold has an Aleph. So this is talking about refined gold. But without the Aleph, it is just gild. Which I looked this up because I thought it was a typo, but it's not. It means to cover thinly with gold or give a specious or false brilliance. Let that sink in. A false brilliance, to cover thinly, to cover. But once you become the oneness unity, you become refined gold. And if you're a refined gold, that means you had to go through the fire. And the fire was up here in Labash. Right here. This isn't the garments of treachery. These are the garments that produce fine gold. How incredible, you guys. I love this. So it also means, without the Aleph, to interweave with gold or adorn. So again, interweaving with gold or adorning outwardly versus becoming refined gold as one. Duality. Where are you at? Well, if we start in the linear fashion with the divine masculine, so again with son and daughter, that means you're going to have to face the sword and the plow. The Zayin is meant to cut away the things that do not assist us any longer, and it's meant to be a plow in our heart to reveal to us, hey, that which we need to build. Gold, meaning to shimmer. Something gold color as oil, connect that as well, but shimmering as gold. And these last three letters here, Hey, Bet Aleph, is the root for Ahav. Ahav, which is part of Ahava. It's love that has not been revealed yet. It's not unconditional. It's conditioned love. But it is part of the process of becoming gold. So conditioned love is to cover thinly with gold or give a false brilliance. But once we become one, and that revelation has really taken a hold of us, because Hey and Aleph are interchangeable. You can't have the Aleph without the Hey. They are both there. It is Ahava. It is truly refined gold. Oneness unity. But we have to face the sword and plow first. We must plow up the fallow ground of our heart so that these revelations can be placed. So the revelation can be placed on the inside, so that we're not just covering ourselves with a thin layer of gold, of false brilliance, but that we truly shine, as this is the oneness that is connected to the pearl. Again, I find this really fascinating that it was written with a Greek word. This is Greek. Margarites. Margarites. But again, it is changed. It's marganitha. So part of it is from a Greek word, but Paul wrote this because he was trying to bring something else into this, because he could have used dalet resh. Dalet resh means properly a pearl, from its sheen and rapid turning, a pearl stone, mother of pearl, or alabaster. This must have an R on the end. But in Greek, it's a pearl. So what is going on here? Look at this. Resh Gimel Nun. To murmur, to grumble and to complain, to speak in a low voice or a whisper. So that would be if it was a fallen Nun, but this is a risen Nun. Resh Gimel Nun Hey, Resh Gimel Nun Hey, like you can't have this Aleph over here without the Hey. And the power can't be given to you without the Hey, because the revelation has to come so that the power can be given. It means intrigue, to have intrigue. That's so amazing to see that. So what Paul is saying is that if you have grumbling, if you have murmuring, and you're complaining on the inside, speaking in a low voice and a whisper, it's there. You are building something on the inside that is going to bring forth bitter, mar, to your garden, gan. I can see how brilliant he was in writing. The resolve is build yourself while you're in the waters of chaos through the living water teachings that are meant to raise you up from being poor and destitute. So you can gather and assemble yourself through these teachings, the instruction needed to wean and ripen you through the spiritual path, the power that is meant to be given to you as the work and deed of your hand by looking at this vision and doing something with it, so that you can be marked in the covenant that exempts you from judgment, because you are no longer judging, no longer dividing in the system of duality, no longer dueling, because you've become one. You are a pearl that has been connected to the refiner's gold, because you chose to went through the fire and the water, which is connected to Shem, the name. And we talked about that at the beginning, those who are called that are be named. And then we have the Aleph Vav that is connected to, again, garments and clothes. How interesting that now we have this again. But what is this word saying to us? So if it's garments, outer robes, coats, and clothes, look what else is also in here. Nun Het Tav at its root means to come down, to go down, to descend, fall, lower, bring down, and pull down. Well, we have all descended, we have all fallen into our lower consciousness levels. When we came in, we forgot. We don't know who we are. But we're also pulling something down and bringing it down. What are we bringing down? The oneness unity. The sons who build it, Bet Nun, because it is an inside job. But look what else is here, you guys. It's Nun Het. This is the root for Noach, meaning to rest. So what are we building? We are building through the spiritual path on the inside life. Because the spiritual path that we take is life. It brings life to us so that we can be marked, exempt from judgment, no longer dueling in the system of duality, because we've been brought into the oneness unity. So these are the garments that we clothe ourselves, but it's on the inside. And we're bringing down this oneness unity, because when we get into oneness unity, this is when we enter into rest. And look, the last word means to be beautiful, good and well. To be beautiful, good and well. Shin Beresh. Shin Beresh. Please, to be pleasing, to be fair, bright, good, and adorn. As beautiful. But we've seen it's all an inside job. It's about being beautiful, about shining and being bright, to glisten in our brightness, to be beautiful, fair, comely, to be improved, embellished and adorned, was improved, beautified and embellished. With what? Power on the inside. We are given power from Source Creator, from Abba, from Source, from Origin. And this is what radiates out of us. This is what makes us shine. This is what makes us bright. This is what is pleasing, because we went through the consuming fire that dealt with our lower flesh, so that we could do what? Peresh, produce fruit. Through the mouth that was pierced, where we speak things that are edifying, exhorting, lifting up, encouraging, not fallen in nature. That brings us the revelation, where we are given power on the inside, that which is the work and deed of our hand, because this little seed vision was given to us on the inside in order to raise us up from the poor and destitute place into becoming first fruit leaders that can see. So in other words, what it also is saying is that these who have done this work will be seen as being truly beautiful, that it will be seen because they were improved. They beautified themselves. They were made beautiful because they did all the inside work. It's not the external adornment in the flesh. It's the inside work. So it's not to be shamed because you're wearing jewelry and earrings and braiding yourself. There's nothing wrong with looking nice. There's nothing wrong with it at all. That is shame and guilt that has been put on through a religious system. Beware the leavening of the Pharisees that would put shame and guilt on you. Because everything is meant as an inside job. So whether you wear makeup or you don't wear makeup, it makes no difference at all. Paul's saying, work on the inside, because true beauty radiates from the inside out. And if you're putting the external adornment on you, and you haven't done the inside work, it will be seen. You may be pretty on the outside, but what is being revealed by the actions and the deeds of the work of your hand is going to show whether or not you are truly beautiful in the area that it matters the most. So this is in bringing the divine masculine and feminine together in one, the power of uniting by building as a son into the completed works of the daughter, where you've unified everything into oneness. Strong love, the strength of one who is strong and beautiful. Shalom, shalom, and namaste.